Okay, welcome everyone to today's webinar on blue parks, accelerating effective ocean conservation. My name is Sarah Carr, and I'm Chief Knowledge Broker for OCTO, Open Communications for the Ocean. OCTO is an NGO that connects ocean professionals to the knowledge and networks they need through our webinar series and our MPA help, EBM help, and ocean plasticless communities. Today, we're very excited to have a great group of folks to talk to you about blue parks. They'll all be introduced over time in the webinar. I wanted to let everyone know as we get started that you're welcome to ask questions at any point during the webinar. There will be dedicated time for a panel discussion and then questions at the end of the webinar. There are two ways that you can send in questions. You can put them into the chat and either make them just visible to hosts and panelists or make them visible to everyone, or you could put them in the Q&A. I just say if you're going to make, you can also put in relevant comments and sort of ask questions that are addressed, answer questions that are addressed in the chat. We welcome you to do this. It can make for a really rich conversation. Just please keep anything you put in the chat for everyone on the topic. And so again, welcome everyone. I'd like to start off by introducing Sarah Hameed of the Marine Conservation Institute, who's going to walk you through what the webinar will cover. Sarah, I'll turn over to you.
Thanks so much, Sarah. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks so much to OCTO for hosting us and allowing us to talk about blue parks and share this information through the webinar series. So I direct the Blue Parks Initiative at Marine Conservation Institute. Blue Parks is aimed at accelerating effective ocean conservation, and it's endorsed by the UN Ocean Decade. So I'm going to give you an overview of who's going to be talking today and what we're going to be talking about. So here we go. So I'm going to give a little bit of background about the initiative and the Blue Parks Standard, which is really at the core of the initiative. I'm going to pass it over to my colleagues, first Jessica MacCarthy and then Leticia de Bonilla, to talk about other aspects, other pieces of the initiative, the awards, and our collaborations with communities. And then we're going to open it up to a panel discussion and get some Blue Parks perspectives. And this really hints at the fact that while this is an initiative of Marine Conservation Institute, it is powered by partnership in a huge way. And so we'll have a couple of our Science Council members, Rodolphe, Ratana, and we'll have a couple of representatives of a recent Blue Park award winner from 2025, Maylin and Yareth. So I'll introduce them in a little bit more depth once we get to our panel conversation. Blue Parks was really an initiative aimed at addressing this problem that was raised by David Attenborough and many others, but David Attenborough in his recent ocean film, that while we've got about 10% of the global ocean officially protected, according to official records, only about 3% is effectively protected. And that's just based on, being fully implemented and being fully or highly protected. And so it doesn't even get into some of the other issues like effective management and durable and equitable governance. So we've got not only, and we know that we need to get to beyond 30% of the global ocean protected in order to protect biodiversity and be successful in our efforts. So we have a huge quality gap in addition to a coverage gap for marine protection. And so to try to accelerate not only coverage, like our targets, the 30 by 30 target attempts to do, but also the quality of that coverage, we launched the Blue Parks Initiative. And the Blue Parks Initiative, to kind of address that problem, has a three-part strategy. The first part of that strategy is to set a global standard. And within the Blue Parks Initiative and coming out of a science-based organization, we used the good science about marine protection that's been, a body of science that's really built up over the last number of decades and translated that for decision making and for MPA implementation. So that's the first step, and that's the piece I'm going to be talking about most. We incentivize that standard through international prestigious awards. And we support progress towards the standard by collaborating with local communities who are implementing marine conservation efforts and attempting to achieve the standard. So that Blue Park standard that I'm going to be talking a little bit about, I'm going to give you a sense of all of the pieces of the Blue Park standard today. But I want to, before I forget, just note this link that I've got down at the bottom, this web link where you can download the complete standard. We keep the standard up to date with the relevant science. Every couple of years, we come out with we publish a new version of the standard. And in 2025, we reorganized the standard, and really so that it could be better communicated. The criteria didn't change so much as the organization for communication. So we hope that this standard is easier to follow and better for guiding decision making around MPA implementation. So as I mentioned, this standard synthesizes decades of MPA science. It was developed in collaboration with so many marine scientists from around the world through a series of workshops that go back to, I think, 2015 or even earlier than that, maybe 2014. I'm excited to be able to introduce a couple of our Science Council members who've been engaged since some of those early days. It was in those early days referred to as the Global Ocean Refuge System and the Global Ocean Refuge Criteria. We changed names eventually because that was a mouthful and maybe tricky in translation. But it's based on the same science, and it's just a name update. I think we updated the name about 2019. So it's been developed in collaboration with many, many scientists through many forums. And as I mentioned, it's updated regularly. And it's intended to both provide guidance for decision making around MPA implementation and a benchmark to be able to measure progress towards an effective marine protected area. So it's got all of those components that we know are associated with positive conservation outcomes, so that MPAs deliver on the intention to be able to revitalize ocean ecosystems. As I mentioned, we reorganized the criteria last year, and we reorganized the criteria around six components, if you will: design, governance, protection, management, compliance, and capacity. And I'm going to spend just a moment talking a little bit about the kinds of questions we address with sort of in each of these components. Oops, what did I do? Oh, and there again, I'm going to keep that URL up for anybody who's interested in downloading the full standard. I should also mention that the full standard document that you can download also gets into all of the science and all of all of that good science that's behind each of these components and all of the criteria. So, location and design for biodiversity conservation. Here's where we ask the question: is this protected area located in a place that's important for marine wildlife? Is it located in a place that's particularly biodiverse, in an important ecosystem, an ecosystem that might be, maybe it's particularly rare for the biogeographical region that it's in, or maybe it supports particularly rare or endangered species, or maybe it's just particularly biodiverse in terms of its richness of species. And is then it effectively designed to conserve those important aspects. So we consider, how is it sized? How is it shaped? How are the boundaries designed around those important ecological aspects? And we think about representativity and connectivity in relationship to other protected areas in the region. Number two is durable and equitable governance. This is an area of science that's maybe become even more robust just in the last decade. But the first basic question is this area intended for long-term conservation? Is it durable? Is it going to be lasting? But then, and here are some really important questions, are the rights of Indigenous people observed? And are Indigenous communities and local communities included and involved in decision-making for the protected area? Protection from harmful activities. This is also sometimes known as protection level. And so is the area protected from damaging activities like industrial scale fishing, oil and gas extraction, and impactful development? We know a lot about the kinds of ecological impacts of different human activities in ocean ecosystems. And so being able to translate that science into information about, okay, well, what kinds of conservation outcomes can you expect if you're allowing, these kinds of human activities is really important. So we ask the question, are the zones fully and highly protected? We use the regulations-based classification system in this, which is a precursor for, many of you may know, the MPA guide. It was a precursor to the MPA guide and is also in the scientific literature and cited in the standard if you're interested in finding out more. Evidence-based management. Does the MPA have a management plan? And does that management plan include an evidence-based or an adaptive management cycle with measurable conservation targets, identified threats, management activities to try to mitigate those threats and achieve the conservation targets, and ecological monitoring to know if those activities and those conservation plans are being effective and whether or not they may need to be reconfigured. A comprehensive compliance strategy. So we often focus a lot on enforcement, but there's a lot that goes into compliance even before you get to surveillance and enforcement. So first of all, are the rules and regulations and boundaries effectively communicated with communities and users? And then is social influence and community engagement used to encourage compliance and to increase compliance rates? And then you also, of course, need those surveillance and enforcement activities as well. And are they appropriate to the size and accessibility of the marine protected area? And then finally, all of those best laid plans are only effective if you've got the capacity to implement them. And of course, this is, we know, an area where many MPAs struggle with challenges in terms of having the capacity to fully implement their plans. So does the MPA have the budget, the staff, the resources, and utilize partnerships to be able to implement its management and compliance strategies? So those are the 6 big puzzle pieces, according to the science of marine protected areas that we take a look at through the standard. And as I mentioned, I'm going to pass it off now to my colleague, Jessica MacCarthy, to talk a little bit about the Blue Park Awards, which relates to this second piece of the strategy, that incentive to achieve the standard.
Thanks, Sarah. Give me 1 second here to switch
Yes, and I'll stop
slides.
my share.
All right. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, you guys just disappeared from me, but as long as you guys can see it. All right. Thank you. As Sarah said, my name is Jessica MacCarthy, and I've been at Marine Conservation Institute working on the Blue Parks Initiative for 7 years now. So I'm going to talk to you a bit about the Blue Park Awards. And the Blue Park Awards are awarded on an annual basis to MPAs that meet the Blue Park standard that Sarah just explained. And Sarah actually set the stage really nicely at the beginning, explaining that three-part strategy of Blue Parks. So the Blue Park Awards is that second part of the strategy, the part of the program that really focuses on accelerating progress by incentivizing effective conservation. The Blue Park Awards provide this incentive by earning an MPA international recognition and providing that MPA with real, meaningful benefits. Some of those benefits listed here include national and community pride, and that the award really honors and celebrates the commitment of managers, of local communities, and of governments to conservation done right. The award can also benefit sustainable tourism and visibility by drawing global attention to that area. MPAs can also gain government and political leverage as well as donor credibility, and that the recognition through this independent science-based process can strengthen standing with government agencies for grant proposals and in donor relationships. Awardees also join the Blue Parks Network, which is our global community of MPA managers and practitioners that's great for things like peer learning, troubleshooting problems in your MPA, and just ongoing collaboration on a variety of projects. And then lastly, awardees do receive a cash prize with the award and access through the Blue Parks Network to additional funding opportunities and capacity building opportunities that help them sustain that level of conservation success. The annual Blue Park Awards event we like to think of as the Oscars of the ocean. We typically make the award announcement at major international meetings. These are places like the Our Ocean Conference or the UN Ocean Conference. This year, we announced 6 new Blue Park awardees at the Our Ocean Conference in Mombasa, Kenya in June. And we put out press releases. We promote them over social media and with our communications partners. And this year, for the first time, actually, we simultaneously hosted an online awards announcement at the same time as the live event to really broaden our reach beyond those that could actually be present at the conference. And these awards events bring much needed recognition to the people who have really poured their energy and their passion into making these effective MPAs. Okay, so how does an MPA become a Blue Park? This graphic explains it in a pretty concise way. So looking at that first box, that's our nominations. So MPAs are nominated through a nomination form that's available on our website. There's a link at the bottom there, and I believe Leticia can also drop it in the chat for you. Nominations are currently open. When we receive a nomination, the Blue Parks team reviews the information submitted in the nomination and does additional research related to the Blue Park standard. This is through both the MPA's documentation as well as communication directly with the management team. And then we write up an evaluation report for that nominee. The evaluation report is posted to our website for public comment, but we particularly seek out comment from people who have extensive experience with that MPA because we're really looking to determine whether we missed anything or got anything wrong in that report. Then moving on to the third box, the comments along with the evaluation report are passed on to our Blue Park Science Council. This is our Blue Park Science Council. It's made up of about 30 marine conservation science experts from around the world, and it is the Science Council who ultimately decides whether an MPA meets the Blue Park standard. Okay, going back to this graphic, onto the fourth box. Then we announce the Blue Park Award winners. That's when we get to have the big, fun, celebratory event. And then in kind of that last box where the arrow's pointing back, that box is just to say that we do go through a 5-year review process where we review Blue Park Award winners again to ensure that they are maintaining the standard and will remain a member of the Blue Parks Network. The result of the Blue Parks Initiative to date is this network of 40 Blue Parks across 30 countries and indigenous territories. Blue Parks currently cover about 1.2% of the global ocean. Looking at this map, you'll also see these orange pins that are our Blue Spark collaborations. That is the last component of our strategy, but I am actually going to pause there and pass it over to Leticia who is our program associate at Marine Conservation Institute and can tell you more about those.
Thanks, Jess.
I will stop my screen share.
Oh, can you see my screen? Great. So the Blue Sparks, as Jess said, are the Blue Parks of tomorrow. They are collaborative partnerships designed to support MPA managers and local leaders in strengthening MPAs and work toward meeting the Blue Park standard. So what is our role in these partnerships? We evaluate the MPA against the Blue Park standard and provide guidance. So we identify priority actions, we create a roadmap, and also track progress over time. We also facilitate technical guidance and scientific expertise by connecting local leaders with experts and practitioners in the field, and by producing science information letters, which could be used for educational or advocacy purposes. Through the Small Grants Initiative and workshops, we provide funding and capacity building opportunities to the members of the network. So, for example, we are currently working with a partner with communication expertise named Compass to bring this expertise to the Blue Parks and the Blue Sparks. So it's a year-long project where members of the network can join free communication workshops and one-on-one consultations with the Compass team to pursue communication projects of their own. We also issue letters of support to advance designation and management initiatives, and we promote and work hard to increase the visibility of these areas and the work behind them through storytelling, as well as documentary story films in collaboration with our Blue Park ambassadors and social media features. So Blue Sparks are very site-specific and may be at very different stages in designation and implementation. So I added here a few examples for you. The first one is the Inhamban Bay Community Conservation Network, also locally known as CITICA. It's a small-scale network of 9 no-take MPAs in Mozambique, which protects critically important seagrass and mangrove habitats. So we help to connect the local leaders in the area with a sponsor that provided funding for a boat to improve enforcement efforts. We were also able to highlight their work in short documentary film called Behind the Blue Spark of Inham Bay by the Blue Quest. The second one is the Shark Fin Bay MPA network, which includes 5 multi-use MPAs in Northern Palawan in the Philippines. And we conducted a preliminary evaluation of the area against the Blue Park standard and provided some guidance on some next steps to strengthen the site. And about 2 years later, in 2025, the network actually received a Blue Park Award, earning that global recognition of being a highly effective marine protected area. And then lastly, for Piedra del Viento and Topocalma Nature Sanctuary in Chile, this was a very different stage in implementation from, for example, the Shark Fin Bay, which was pretty much at the end stage. We supported the designation campaign that led to the area being recognized as a sanctuary. So we partnered with Fundación Rompientes, which is a Chilean nonprofit working to conserve biodiversity alongside surf breaks and support local communities. And they successfully championed the designation of Piedra del Viento and Topocalma Nature Sanctuary in 2021, which is pretty great. So each Blue Spark follows its own path, but they all share the same goal, which is to build stronger, more effective marine protected areas that may become the blue parks of the future. So with that, I will hand it over back to Sarah.
Thanks. Okay, so I'm going to share a slide one last time. Well, I guess I'll also share a slide at the very end, but oh, but I need to make it big, don't I? There we go. Continue to share. Okay, hopefully that works. Do we have the panelists up on the screen? You guys see that? Yes? Okay, good. Fantastic. So we're going to jump into a conversation. Thank you so much, Joss and Leticia, for kind of giving us all the background on the Blue Parks Initiative and all these different aspects of what we do. On the Blue Parks team. So, but as I mentioned at the very beginning, this happens, the Blue Parks Initiative really only happens in extreme collaboration with lots of folks from around the world. And so I'm really excited to have our panel conversation here and to introduce to you some folks who are engaged in the Blue Parks Initiative, but who do not work at Marine Conservation Institute. Before I jump into a quick introduction of them, I just want to let you know, I know we said this before, but feel free to keep adding questions to the chat or to the Q&A section of the Zoom. We will get to hopefully all of your questions throughout. We're going to start with some background conversation, but about Blue Parks engagement, but we will jump into your questions pretty soon here. So keep those rolling in. So our Blue Parks Science Council, these are our marine conservation science experts from around the world who not only inform and have contributed to the Blue Park Standard over the years and reviewed that with us and workshopped that with us, but also every year review our nominees and not only judge kind of where they sit with respect to the Blue Park Standard, but also provide valuable feedback that we're able to synthesize and give back to managers at the end of the review process, whatever the outcome is. So our Blue Park Science Council members that we have today, Ratana Chuenpagdee from the university, who is a university research professor at Memorial University, and Rodolphe de Villers, I'm going to one day get it. De Villers, kind of close. Senior research scientist for the French National Research Institute for Sustainable Development. We've also got representatives, as I mentioned, from a 2025 Blue Park Award winner, Cahuita National Park in Costa Rica. We've got Maylin Morris Arias, who is the regional director for the region that Cahuita falls in for the National System of Conservation Areas of Costa Rica, SINAC, and Yareth Ledezma Gomez, who is the Sustainable Tourism Program lead for this same region that Cahuita falls in. And so both of these folks were really engaged in the Blue Park nomination process, as well as then earning the award last year. So I'm really excited to give them the floor. I'm going to now stop sharing my screen so that we can see them as we talk. So I'm going to pass this to each of you one by one, a question about, your engagement with Blue Parks, but ask that you feel free to kind of introduce aspects of your work and your background in relationship to this question. So I'm going to start with our Science Council members. So maybe Ratana, I'm curious for you to answer, why did you join the Blue Park Science Council? And maybe you could also mention for both of you guys who've stuck around with us for many years, why you've stuck around for so many years.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Thanks for the invitation to join this webinar. I really appreciate hearing from your team, right? Because I don't get to do much in my role to really learn about what you have been doing, mostly behind the scene by the time it gets to me, and etc. But Rodolphe, I don't know if you recall, we actually organized a workshop in 2015 when we invited Lance Morgan, who is the president of Marine Conservation Institute, to come and talk about this. At that time, it was called Glorious, which you changed your name later. So I think it was really something that I mean, of course, I work a little bit on MPAs. In fact, doing a lot of research on MPA governance, and it's kind of like this kind of opportunity to contribute to how we could evaluate MPAs is something that I have been interested in, but we didn't really have an idea about where we were going at that time. So I'm really happy to see, right, that it turned into this very, very important, award that is recognized around the world. So my role in this is basically, I think it's to bring in a little bit of that perspective on human dimensions in particular, which is something that I do in my research, and like I said, on governance. So being at Memorial University in St. John's, Newfoundland, we have some MPAs, but I don't know. I mean, I think Canada got one of the awards now, so that's not a bad thing. But yeah, we'll see where we're going with this. I'll stop here for now. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Ratana. So Rodolphe, I'm going to pass the same question on to you. And as I said, feel free to bring in any sort of background that you see fit. But why did you join the Blue Parks Science Council, and why are you sticking around?
Why I joined? Because Lance invited me in 2014 in Scotland at IMCC to the first, before even Glorious was launched, when we were thinking about criteria and the whole program and all that. So that's where it comes from. Why I stuck? Because I guess I enjoy it, and maybe the main point if why I do that is because I think it matters, and it's a way for me as a scientist, that spend my time in like reading papers and thinking of conceptual things to get grounded into real things, and it's a mechanism for me to translate science into policy and trying to inform policy a bit more directly than just like publishing a paper and hope somebody is going to read it, which we know doesn't happen that much. So it's getting out of the ivory tower, like they say for scientists. It's trying to reach out and go through an NGO, and offering my service, like everybody else on the board, to try to help people set up a useful system that can actually make a difference.
Thanks so much. And we appreciate both of you guys. Both of you guys predate me in the Blue Parks Initiative. I joined Marine Conservation. I was at that same meeting in 2014 and, heard Elliot speak about this idea of glories, but joined the Institute a couple years later to help get it launched. So I want to talk to our representatives from Cahuita National Park, a Blue Park Award winner from just last year. So, Maylin, I'm interested to hear from you how the Blue Park Standard has influenced you in your work. And so you might want to bring in a little bit about kind of your work and focus.
No, thank you so much. First, we have to thank you all for change your site to this part of the world. Costa Rica is a very small country, but we have a very important biodiversity that has to be protected. Thanks for the question. I think, as I said, in Costa Rica, our beloved Cahuita National Park has been a promoter of shared governance, a model that exists for around 30 years, and along all this time, has found a way to empower more and more people in our communities. It's very important to mention that our shared governance is the only example existing in Costa Rica with this model. Because of this, sometimes we could have some doubts about how to keep enforcing a model that is completely different from what is practiced in the rest of the country. The Blue Park standard has been a site which confirms that the path that we have taken is the right one. Beyond mere changes because of the standard, this price has fostered greater confidence and empowerment among our staff. That is so important. Our community rangers, our local park council members, our participating local organizations. Furthermore, it has opened avenues and lines for dialogue and continuous improvement with the new administration of our Ministry of Environment, with the aim of ensuring continued support from the Costa Rican state for this effective management model. Likewise, it has enabled us to prioritize and allocate greater resources to the national parks marine area to change the conservation of our marine resources. Those are a little bit of what I have to say. I will hand it over to Yareth. He can say a little bit more.
Oh, thank you. First of all, let me thank you for this great opportunity you're giving to us, actually, to participate and to share a little of this process and this wonderful experience that we had with the process of Blue Parks. Actually, something kind of new for us. We knew about that, of course, before, but it was, I think, kind of goal that we wanted to get, right? And it was amazing. Thank you very much. About the thing you are asking, Sarah, I really want to focus in the topic of people because I think that's an important issue, actually. Having this Blue Parks Award means that the park rangers and the Cahuita community connected to the park realize that the importance and the ecological richness of the marine protected area are appreciated and recognized internationally. And believe it or not, this greatly increases the motivation of our staff and brings about very positive changes in how we manage the MPA and the way to think of the people who work for the conservation of Cahuita National Park. I think that this situation gives a lot of energy to the crew and also gives the motivation to keep working on the way that we have been trying to do, and even better, to try to improve the park management actions. I think that's important, the topic of people.
Thank you so much for that. I couldn't agree more. And I'm so glad to hear that that was an important aspect of your experience with Blue Parks. So let's see. I want to come back now to Ratana and ask about, in your experience and both, looking at Blue Park Award nominees over the years, as well as your own research, what are the most common gaps or challenges in MPA governance?
Yeah. Thanks for that question. And I think you kind of mentioned that as you started the webinar about the importance of looking not just at quantity but also quality. But the problem is it's actually quite difficult, right, to assess the quality of something. And I think when we were working before about MPA effectiveness, we use a set of indicators. And again, the human dimensions, socioeconomic and cultural and other kind of a bit more qualitative side of things are very difficult to capture and assess. And I think we have gone a long way to look at, to kind of review and revise the standard in such a way that it opens up, right, an opportunity to look at these very important let's say, criteria and considerations. But I think when we started to get into, and this is one of the things that really strike me as quite unique. I mean, you actually make it very explicit about indigenous people rights, for instance. And that's not an easy one. I mean, even though it's just about recognizing, we want to get to the protection of, right? But that's a long way to go before then. But other key consideration about participation of communities, that is also a very important one that we need to look at. And I think that makes a difference when we can recognize those efforts. And it's exactly what Yareth just said, right? It helps motivate the people, and then, it provides really good incentive. I'm always curious about this tier system, right? I mean, even the standard itself, what it means to get the standard and what it means when you don't have it. And I think we need to be quite careful about not turning it into, it's not a penalty, right? When you don't have it. But it's a reward when you have it. So how do you encourage more people? I mean, not all MPAs count. I mean, Rodolphe and I always have this discussion about how big it needs to be, what are we trying to protect, right? And to me, it's a process that also counts, right? Of, or, people intention to do it, and whether it's going to lead to any government efforts or not, that's another story. Eventually, I think we're going to need to get into what we need to do to hold governments more accountable, given the need or the kind of interest that we have. We can talk a little bit more about that as well. But to me, what we are trying to do here, and what I think the Blue Park has really contributed to, is bringing us to think more broadly about the different criteria and considerations when we talk about MPAs.
Thank you for that. And you anticipate kind of our question about, well, what does it mean to have a global standard? And what's the value of that? Rodolphe has pointed out to me that time flies when we're having fun and discussing MPAs, because we love them. So I am going to ask Rodolphe a question here, but we are probably going to maybe skip around a little bit and over some of our questions so that we can make sure we get to some audience questions, because I think there are some. And I know that Jess has been gathering them up for us. But I want to ask Rodolphe a question, and then maybe Yareth a question, and then maybe we'll try to tackle some audience questions. And if we tackle them, we'll come back to our questions. But so Rodolphe, I want to ask you just very briefly from the Science Council perspective, what it looks like to kind of go through the process of assessing a nominee or a couple of nominees each year. And if you want to touch on this, kind of big picture piece that Ratana was also speaking to, feel free to, about kind of what it means to try to address this kind of standard. I'll let you approach that as well.
Thanks. So each year, as a scientific reviewer of that, I get an email with, Sarah tells me you have to review 1 or 2 or maybe 3 MPAs this year. I get a download link, and then I get like a lot of files. I get a folder with 30, 40 files. And then in this, I have a summary from the MCI team of how they think, from having read all the material they had, the MPA meets the different criteria. So their assessment, basically. And then I have all the information that they use to come to this assessment. So that can be the MPA management plan, past management plans, that can be scientific papers that are talking about this MPA and how effective or not effective it is. That can be the comments from people that were left, like, Sarah and Jessica were explaining the process. So some people left some comments. So as a reviewer, so I read their report, I read all the comments, I read normally all the management plan, and then depending on the type of information I need, I go and grab some elements in the more detailed information. So it may happen that I can read a scientific paper on one specific aspect to make my mind, because So, and I have to confront them to this scheme, those criteria, the best I can. And maybe just shortly, like to finish on that, the most difficult part of my job is it's very context dependent. Like it's not a one size fits all. I cannot just like look at the report and just assess something because there are always nuances and some historical context to the MPAs and things that are weak but could be worse or have been better recently but were worse before and all that. And I have to consider all that. And so I write my report. I just explain how I think the MPA meets or doesn't meet each single criteria. And then when MCI receive that, they get my review, but they also get like maybe 4, 5, or 6 reviews from different members of the board. And then they confront that. And if we disagree, then we have a healthy chat among ourselves, to explain our point of view and why we said that and blah, blah, to reach a consensus. That's in a nutshell.
Thanks so much. And so Maylin and Yareth, I'll let you guys decide who wants to take this question, but I think it starts to address one of the early questions that I saw coming through. And so I really wanted to get to it, which is not only we're kind of skipping over, but you can address a little bit about, what motivated you to go for the award. And I know you kind of already addressed that, but in terms of what has the earning the award, what has that meant in practice? So that happened a year ago now. It's 1 year out. You've earned the award, and it's, the announcement was public. And so I'm curious, what has it changed anything? What you've gotten out of it?
I can give a little introduce, but Jared can keep going. It's not, I want to take some words of Ratana about this. I mean, we keep working on the conservation of marine resources for a long years, but sometimes you make your work and nobody see it, right? So this is being seen at a worldwide level. That is very, very important. And give to the people the place they really recognized what the value have and what that work means, not just for Costa Rican or local people here in the Caribbean South. It means to the whole world. That's very important. So you are now Costa Rica, and Cahuita National Park has a little bit point in the worldwide map. That's a very big recognition. Jared, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Maylin. And thank you for your question, Sarah. Actually, well, as Maylin said at the beginning, our national park is a very good example how a protected area can work directly with the community in a very, very close relation. And actually, in Cahuita National Park, over 30 years, we have been working hand by hand with the community. And in the practice, this award means that actually people remember and realize the significant amount of effort and work that has been carried over the years, right? However, we also became aware of our weaknesses and the areas where we need to focus on efforts and allocate more resources to improve and build the mechanisms for verifying effective management, right? But with the recommendations of the council committee, we already know that which is the way when we have to go now, right? Actually, that's clearly because, if we in the domestic area, we think to know what we have to do, which is okay, because actually we have been trying with our laws and regulations in our country, in Costa Rica, doing the things. But when we have these recommendations for an international council, actually that's easier to know the way where we have to focus and to be doing the next steps. Finally, actually, it has been very rich. This opportunity, it has been increasing our knowledge about how to manage the park, and all of the recommendations are really good in order to improve the management.
Thanks so much. So we had a couple other, we still have a couple of other prepared questions, but I do want to reserve a little bit of time for our audience questions because I do think we have some. And I don't know, Jess. Oh, good, you're there. If you want to pop in and
Yeah, we have a lot, so we'll see how many of these we can get to in the next 10 minutes. A lot of
maybe
them,
we should
Sarah, I think.
say we can try to keep addressing questions that are about the Blue Parks initiative afterwards, and folks can reach out to us and we'll give you guys information about how to do that.
Okay, I think most of them are directed probably more towards us.
Okay. Let's hear it.
But I will go through them, and then maybe Letty too, if you want to drop our email address in the chat, especially for anything that we don't get to, people will be able to reach out to us. All right. How does long-term financing fit into the standard for blue parks? We know this is a key challenge to sustaining effective long-term conservation for MPAs.
I see Rodolphe has a
Yeah.
wants to take this one. Go.
I read this one earlier, so I just prepared an answer if you want. No, but in the evaluation we do, there is a criteria. I have it in front of me, although it just disappeared, which is capacity for implementation, where we assess, basically, does the MPA have sufficient staff, budget, training, and all that. So it stays at a very general level, but we are looking at, what's the funding compared to what's the ambition of the MPA? Obviously if they give you like a $1,000 per year to manage 5,000 square kilometer MPA, that doesn't work, But then we also look at the history of that, the funding and how stable it is. And one thing it reminded me, I just stopped with that, but it's several MPAs actually get part of their funding from entry fees. And for instance, when there was the COVID crisis, those entry fees dropped, and that created a lot of problem in some MPAs that couldn't sustain some staff because they didn't have the budget. So we're trying to look at MPAs in their context again. Where they get the money, is it stable? Does it allow them to remain with some level of activity or not? And then we provide recommendation or say, careful to this, careful to that. Obviously, we don't have the hands in the budget details, but this is clearly like the long-term financing is a key criteria in the evaluation.
That was
Awesome.
perfect.
Thank
I don't
you.
need to add much to that.
All right, there's a second part to that question that I'm not sure if Maylin or Yareth, you all have anything to speak to for this one, and if not, Sarah, maybe you can touch on some other MPAs. The question is, how has the Blue Park designation helped bring in new funding or blended financing to MPAs?
I think Maylin, you're muted.
It used to happen. Sorry. I will take this one. First of all, is I think we have to say it. Have this award was a blessing for us because we and the local management or protected areas, we have different voices that want to say something about how the way you have to manage them, right? And marine conservation is not just difficult, it's very expensive too. So we need to have more funding, we need to have more stakeholders, we need to have individuals working with us. And sometimes we need that push, right? So the Blue Parks came to do that. As I said, there was a reward, there was a recognition of the work of many years and many hearts in Cahuita too. And that time, the last year, our former minister traveled to Nice and to accept the award and receive it was a source of pride for him, obviously, for us and for the entire country. This event significantly strengthen the park's relationship with our authorities. And also, it has been a source of pride to Cahuita community. Thanks to years of hard work, has inspired new organizations. That's a important goal for us and individuals to join the marine conservation efforts we carry in the park. It has served also as a showcase to highlight the value of the national park. We also expect that not just because of the price, it's more that because of the people that been working with us. It's engage and encourage more and more people to work in the marine conservation area, not just Cahuita National Park, that is the one to have the prize. We have another marine conservation area very close to the south of Cahuita, and it needs also help and encourage and embrace more efforts for conservation. So this is a very important opportunity. So everyone that is listening, we help. We need some help, and we really expect that you see and apply or visit us in our protected areas, so you can help to keep this type of model and carry on of this conservation marine processes.
I think that's perfect. I mean, I would add that the Blue Parks team is really interested in bringing financing expertise to the network. Because we know that this is a huge problem for marine protected areas. But the ways that the Blue Parks Initiative itself directly sort of influences financing is really, as Maylin pointed out, with sort of elevating the importance of capacity for MPAs for governments, and elevating these MPAs that are nominated for the award or working towards the standard. And also leveraging sort of ecotourism. I know from other awarded blue parks that it's also been helpful, particularly in places where the community is also very economically tied to the tourism associated with that marine protected area. That can be a really valuable leverage for the whole community to be able to promote their marine protected area as a Blue Park Award winner. And I know that this has come up recently. I was speaking with a Blue Parks manager recently, who had just gone through the 5-year review, and that 5-year review push had helped, kind of resecure the MPA's budget, official budget, and recommit the community to that Blue Park standard. So, I'll pass it back to you, Jess, if we've got more questions.
Okay. Yeah, we only have 2 minutes left.
Okay,
I think I'm gonna have to just pick one more and then let Sarah Carr wrap things up here. I think anyone could really speak to this one, but I'm gonna point it at Rodolphe and Ratana. How can blue parks help protect marine biodiversity while supporting sustainable fisheries?
Okay, so people always see these as
that's the argument. We argue always with Ratana about
we
that.
always argue about this, but
Okay, go.
in all fairness, they're actually compatible, right? When you think about it, when you have healthy ocean, healthy marine environment, you actually get healthy fisheries and healthy communities as well. With the Blue Park standard, including a very strong component on the protecting from harmful activities, including many other, different ocean-based activities. I think we actually can see that, community can be involved and benefit from the protection of marine biodiversity and can still maintain their livelihoods, and exactly what you said earlier, Sarah.
Thanks so much, Rodolphe. Did you want to speak to anything?
Well, it's a tricky thing. Well, first, it depends what we mean by sustainable fisheries. How do you measure that? How do you know what's sustainable? Whatever. So it's so clearly, blue parks is not about protecting areas that are pristine and exclude any fisheries. That's not the model. And there is a lot of criteria that are actually on equity and inclusion of community and acknowledging existing practice, artisanal fisheries and all that. However, it's also acknowledging that some fishing practice are unacceptable. So we have another comment like dynamite fishing, for instance, and poison fishing and all those things, or some activities could be acceptable, but not in the intensity they have currently. Yeah, so you could be you could have like 10 artisanal fisher on a reef, but you may not have like 1,000 artisanal fisher on a reef, and you clearly cannot have like a deep sea trawler in the area in some context. So it depends how you value sustainable fisheries. But at the end, I think, and that's the side I sometimes disagree with Ratana, is to me, at the end, what's important is protecting biodiversity. And to answer another question, biodiversity can be a set of species or just one species. It depends what's of value at the place. And then whatever does not permit that is not sustainable for this ecosystem. So that's a bit the angle. And that's the nice thing about the Science Council is we all have different backgrounds. So then we can have discussion because we have like Ratana is a social scientist. I come much more from a natural science kind of background on those issues. And that's by having those discussions that it's actually richer, I think, in our assessments by combining those people. Yeah.
Agreed. I really love all the debates we get into as we're deliberating the nominees every year. I learn a lot from them, I know. Okay, so we're after the end of the hour. I'm going to share, and I know we did not get to all of the questions, and I'm so sorry about that. I'm going to share this screen that highlights how folks can continue to share, can get in touch with us if they want to explore some of these questions further or some of the questions that we didn't quite get to. We'd love to chat with you further and hear from you. And so you can email us at blueparks@marine-conservation.org. That basically just comes to us, the team at Marine Conservation Institute, but allows us to tag team whoever's sort of available at the time. You can check out our websites, and I do want to point out that we are accepting nominations right now specifically for the 2027 awards, which we do plan to announce at the 2027 Our Ocean Conference. We accept nominations throughout the year, so we encourage you to take a look and see, when you're ready to submit a nomination. We're also happy to work with you on nominations. When you nominate and you hand over lots of information to us, it doesn't need to be, in a polished essay format. This is we're fact finding and getting the documentation from you. So, but we do need nominations by the 14th of August. If you want to be considered for the 2027 awards. We can't promise that if we receive your nomination after that date that we will have enough time to get through the evaluation before we announce the 2027 Blue Park Award winners. So we ask that you, if you're interested in that opportunity, try to get your nomination in by that date. I want to thank all of our panelists so much for being here. Sarah Carr, I don't know if you want to jump back in and say any last words about OCTO. I'm so sorry for going over. But thank you so much to our audience for joining us. And I hope that we can capture your questions and follow up with you individually for all the questions that we didn't get to.
Well, thank you guys for such an amazing presentation and for doing all this work in the first place. We really appreciate it. And many thanks to everyone who was able to attend today. We appreciate your interest in making the world's oceans healthier. So we'll hope to see you all in future webinars, and the recording of today's webinar will be available on the OCTO website in a few hours, and will probably also be available on Marine Conservation Institute's website as well. Thank you all, and hope to see you in future webinars.